very good evening, everyone. Welcome to the most awaited session by University Connection, along with one of our favorite Harvard scholars, Ms. Kriti Chopra. So first of all, I thank everybody for joining us for today's session. Before we kickstart the session, I thought I would just give all of our wonderful participants a little bit of information with regard to University Connection, who we are, and the kind of workshop that we're having, and also about our wonderful resource person, Ms. Kriti, and today's session. So first, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Shraddha. I'm a counseling psychologist with University Connection. University Connection is not just any other study abroad platform or a scholarship-oriented consultancy. We are currently India's best organization looking to add on to students' holistic skills. We not only focus on providing an open platform for student development, but also look to explore them to global opportunities. And one such opportunity is today's workshop on critical thinking and research skills. So while this is one of the many sessions that we'll be having going ahead, I would like to mention that we are also launching a very, very special web page that curates exclusive and very interactive sessions with experts such as Kriti ma'am here, many more of them who are global thinkers, leaders, and as I said, experts of various fields. So kickstarting this idea from our founder director, Ms. Charushila, I would like to tell you all that today's session, the topic will be critical thinking and research skills. Now, this session will be taken up by our resource person, that is Ms. Kriti Chopra. So Ms. Kriti Chopra is not just any other research scholar. She is a double graduate and an alumni of Harvard School of Education. She's currently a part of Harvard Kennedy School while leading a brilliant project. The other designations and titles that she holds are an educator, a curriculum designer, an ardent researcher, instructional coach, as well as academic director. So Ms. Kriti, we are super excited and super grateful to have an expert as yourself taking up this session. So before we go ahead, I would like to also let you all know that please keep your mics muted because we would love to hear from the expert herself. We will be open to questions in the chat box. So if you have any queries, any questions, you will be able to drop them there and we will make sure to address all of your queries. So with that, over to you, Kriti ma'am, please.
Thank you so much for such a kind introduction, Shraddha. I think I'm still getting to all the things that you've just mentioned that I've already achieved, but thank you. And I'm so happy to be in this session because I've been away from students for a really long time. In my last role, I was still a teacher trainer and an instructional coach. So I was working a lot more with teachers and students. And over the last 1 year also, I'm not really with kids as much, which is my favorite thing to do. So I'm really happy to have all of you here. I'd love it if some of you would switch on your videos because it's just useful for me to see people's faces and reactions when I'm talking. And just before we begin, what I'm going to focus on today is how we all actually practice critical thinking in our lives already. It is showcased to be this really great skill that a lot of us seem to still be struggling with, but actually we all use it pretty often. So we're going to construct the definition together. We're going to construct the way we actually can use it in our everyday lives and do use it in our everyday lives very soon. But before we do any of that, I'd love to get to know all of you a little bit. So if you can take a minute to just introduce yourself in the chat, write your name, and 3 to 5 words to describe yourself. It can be how you see yourself. It can be anything that you think your friends would describe you as. 3 to 5 words just to describe yourself and your name you would like. I don't need your school. I don't need your grade. All of that is immaterial. But I would love to know who you are. And Shraddha, is that?
Absolutely, ma'am. I request everybody, if you could just turn your video on just for a few minutes, maybe, that would be wonderful. So Kriti ma'am can all see all of you. and also get to remember your face. So can we please have everybody turning your video on? Maybe just for a minute is good.
And if possible, can you also please share something about yourself in the chat? And that's for all the university connection people here as well.
We've got a wonderful response. So Ms. Kriti, as you can see,
I'd love to know some of your favorite books, Myra. Wow, Sai. Well, you've got to be confident and self-assured to be a public speaker. It's really difficult to put yourself out there. Thank you, Mahira and Sai, for starting us off. I'd love to hear a little bit more from the others as well. Wow, Shraddha, you're an athlete. Didn't know that.
Very excited to read everybody else's responses. So if you could quickly drop your name and maybe a very brief introduction, we'd be very happy.
Awesome. I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to keep reading what you all have written side by side. But here are my 5 words. I am an educator. That is one side to me. I love to travel. I have my aim is one day to be able to cover more than 100 countries. I'm a little bit late in doing it, but I'll get there. I've always loved to bake. I've started to cook a little bit more as well because Indian food is not great in the US, but I've always loved to bake. I've always been somebody who loves to feed people, and I am somebody who's a very caring caretaker sort of a person. I very naturally assume that responsibility. And yes, I am a recent Harvard graduate. It is, I know it seems like a dream and it seems very distant for a lot of people, but it's really not, particularly at the graduate school level. So if you all ever have questions, Charishila and Shraddha, all of them have my details. Feel free to reach out. They're the best guides you can get to get you to achieve this dream. But are there more people who have shared? Wow, Raima, thank you for sharing. And you write and are creative in different ways. That's amazing. Awesome. So as we begin on this small journey of ours, I have just 3 things that I would love to tell you all. In this process, I'd really appreciate it if you were all present. I know it's very easy to switch on a session like this and then just have your phone open on the side and keep scrolling. For the next 45 minutes, I request that if you can, please just be present. Throughout this process, be curious, ask me questions. I'm happy to take as many questions as you have. And in case I'm not able to answer all of them, I'm okay if those questions are sent to me and I'll answer those later. I will not leave you hanging with questions. So be curious. And I know it's also critical thinking is an issue that we hear about a lot. I'm sure your schools have done sessions. I'm sure you've had other places where you've heard about it. What I'm talking about today is very personal. It's coming from my experience. I've not put my researcher hat on to create this session. My idea was to share how I have experienced critical thinking in my life every day and how I go about it. And I feel that usually comes with a lot more simplicity than a research-based approach does, sometimes, not always. So I'd say rent the idea that I'm sharing, and you can choose to accept it or buy it if you feel convinced. I'm going to try and take you through an activity that kind of showcases how things are done. And if you feel like this is for you, then it's for you. If it's not, then it's an interesting thing that you learned about. Is that okay? Can you share if that's something that you're ready to start with? Give me a thumbs up or any of the reactions from the reaction tab on Zoom. In the meantime, I'm going to check the chat. I'm so happy to see that we have so many bookworms here. And we have creative people, we have dancers. This is wonderful. Awesome. Let's begin. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to actually ask you all to tell me what you think is, okay, wait, let us, sorry, I'm going to exit. Apologies, I haven't done a Zoom session in a while. Okay, so I want to hear from all of you what you think critical thinking is. What do you think it means to have the skill? How do you practice it? Whatever you can come up with. Awesome.
Ms. Kriti, may I?
Yes.
I was hoping to actually share my bit of understanding on critical thinking. I
Awesome.
personally believe critical thinking is the ability to possibly consider and also have an outlook which is of various magnitude, maybe multiple different perspectives.
Okay.
Without maintaining a singular objective of thought.
Okay. Consider multiple perspectives. That's great. Anybody else would like to share what they have heard about critical thinking, what they think it is? Great. So we have somebody saying that thinking deeply on a subject, establishing a clear logical relationship between two things. Okay, we have thinking deeply. What do you think thinking deeply means? Like, how do you think deeply?
I just wanted to answer this question, ma'am, in a different way. Can I, ma'am?
Yes, yes, of course. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think that it depends. Thinking always depend upon the past experience of the person, how they are being groomed in different way, their culture, their economical background, their education, everything matters when it comes for thinking, because
Absolutely.
nothing can be think without the past experience or maybe the knowledge you have. Suppose you give a subject to someone, and if you give them some kind of information regarding the subject, interpretation of all the things will depend upon their knowledge about that particular thing and about their level of thinking, ma'am. So for me, thinking is, it's a mixture of everything: your experience, your your value system, I can say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. So we have to base things on our past experience. We have to see what evidence is available before we take decisions. That's great. I also saw something really nice, Shubham. Thank you for sharing. You've shared something that makes a lot of sense. It's critical thinking is a kind of thinking in which you question, analyze, interpret, evaluate, make a judgment about what you read, hear, say, or write. Absolutely. Particularly nowadays with the kind of fake news that comes out, this is really important to analyze things, to understand things from what we know from before, right? To not just take things on face value. Analyzing situations logically before jumping to conclusions. Awesome. So we have analyzing situations. We have okay, the evaluations issues in order to form judgment. Awesome. So you've all given analyzing dispassionately. Absolutely, Jyoti. That's very relevant to be objective about things, to not let emotional bias or any other thing like confirmation bias sometimes comes in, that we believe something, so we think that we're just going to see it from that perspective. And sometimes we actually research in a way to see things from that perspective. Our questions become very focused on that one issue that we believe in. So if I believe that things are to be done in this way, very often, if I am also doing research around it, I will ask questions to just confirm what I'm thinking instead of asking questions objectively. So objectivity is very important. Right. So I'm just going to quickly share what I think critical thinking is. This is the way I see it, which is actually a great is just the amalgamation of everything that you've said. It's the ability to analyze and evaluate information or situations in a logical and objective manner, to not, like I said, bias come in, to not let our own preconceived notions cloud our judgment, and evaluate what we know or what we can find in a way that helps us come to a decision. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into a very quick 10 to 12-minute activity. If we have enough time for that, yes. These are the 3 problems that I am giving all of you. Just going to do that. And what I want you to do is, I want you to pick any one of the 3. And I want you to read it, create a problem statement. So identify what is it that you're trying to solve. Figure out your next steps, 3 to 5 next steps. And if you can, come to a decision. But what I want you to really focus on is, what is the process that you're going through? What are those next steps? What is the problem in your mind that you are going through to solve? Okay. Are there any questions around this? And you have to do this individually. This is not group work. So it's just you reading a problem and trying to figure out next steps, and if possible, take a decision. Are there any questions regarding this? If not, we can start. And if you have questions while you're working around this, you can send me your questions in the chat. I will start off by giving you 10 minutes. And after that, we'll see if we need more time. Is that okay? Can I get a thumbs up if that's okay? Thank you, Ayush. Thank you, Sai. Awesome. Thank you, Prasha. Sanjiti. Awesome. Why don't we get started? And we'll see at the end of 10 minutes if we need more time. And if you have questions, please feel free to ask in the chat at any point of time. I will be right here.
I believe we have received a few responses, Ms. Kriti.
Yes, we'll just wait for everyone to finish, and actually we'll share when we come back into the session. Instead of right now, let's let everybody kind of go through the problem solving process on their own.
Can you just give a brief summary what you asked to do, because I just joined?
Right. So all I want you to do is, I want you to pick one of the problem scenarios mentioned on the right of your screen. I want you to read it well. I want you to figure out what is the problem that you're trying to solve, and how would you go about solving it? Like, what are the steps that you would take to actually solve this problem? And if you can come up with a decision, or you can choose to not. But I would like you to focus on the process of solving the problem rather than the solution. And we just briefly talked about what critical thinking is.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Once you're done with the problem, would it be possible for you to give me a thumbs up, just so that we can see how many people are done and how many people still need more time? Awesome. We have about 3 more minutes left, and I'll just request everyone to wrap up. I know a lot of you are already done, but we'll just wait for the others who joined a little bit later to finish as well, and then we'll come together. Awesome. I hope you're all done with this little activity. I'd actually love to hear from some of you sorry, don't mean to stop share. I'd love to hear from some of you who chose the first situation. What did you think the problem was? You can share in chat or you can choose to unmute yourself. Both work for me. What did you think the problem was that we were facing in this first scenario of the extended families visiting you, you planned a trip, but you figure out that it's going to be really crowded that day at the monument? What
Maybe
are you
the popularity of that place.
Okay, so the problem is the popularity of the location. Is that what you're saying?
We can also say
Yeah.
that as we are taking a extended family, which means we have a number of people of different age groups, which means that certain people would not be comfortable moving in a crowded area and will not have good time as in they would have it.
Okay, so you're saying getting everyone together in one place could be the problem.
Yeah. And basically not being able to have a quality time which we could get in a small picnic or something.
Right.
Ma'am,
Yes.
the problem of overcrowding is creating barriers in family time.
Okay. Yes. Anybody else? Anybody else would like to share what they thought the problem was?
Mahira is raising her hand.
Yes, Mahira, please share.
I feel like one of the problems would also inevitably be a waste of time, because if you're going all the way to visit a place and it's crowded, you won't get the most out of the situation.
Absolutely.
So that would also be the loss.
That's the situation we want to avoid. Absolutely. I think we got some answers in the chat. Okay. I think these are for other problems, but all right. Awesome. So we've all actually defined the problem very differently already. For some people, it's the location. For some people, it being how productive we are with our time. To somebody else thinking that, oh, it's going to be hard to get everybody together for that long, so we're going to have to figure out how to do that as well. Great work. So according to me, defining the problem becomes the primary part whenever we start this process of critical thinking, right? And it happens very naturally. It's not like one day you sit down and decide, okay, today I'm going to think critically. So defining the problem that we're kind of dealing with in that situation is something that sets the tone for everything else that happens. But let's get to the next steps. So what did all of you think you would do in this situation based on the problem that you had defined? Would anybody like to share? You can share in the chat or you can unmute yourself. I see Iksha has mentioned that that they would explain to the family the given circumstances and plan a trip to a less crowded place so that you can enjoy each other's company. That's great.
I think I'd maybe prefer going to, a small area which is not that popular and not that overcrowded. Maybe a small cafe or something, because it's all about spending quality time with your family at the end, right? So maybe just stay at home and have fun with them, chill out, just maybe get to know each other a little more, because we've been meeting them after so long. So I feel like in this situation for me, where we're going wouldn't matter, but the company would. So
Okay.
yeah.
So you prioritize company over location. That's great. What else? What would be the first thing somebody would do when they find out that, oh, what I had planned isn't going to work out? What would be the first thing?
Look for alternatives.
Okay, look for alternatives.
Also, it says that it's crowded over the weekends, so maybe we could go during the week if we have the time.
Just to change the date, of course. Awesome. Yes, Mahira.
So since this plan was already made, I thought about a lot of things and there are a lot of factors involved. So I thought we could simply go earlier, like maybe during the morning, so we could have a productive start of the day and have more time and get to spend quality time as well as learn something new. So that's two birds with one stone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Can you all see that whatever I have mentioned here, besides maybe look for alternatives, based on what you all said, was actually a kind of a decision instead of just a step that you would take to solve the problem? Going to a different location or how you would prioritize things. Those are decisions. How many of you thought, I know some of you mentioned this in the chat, but how many of you thought of, okay, so the first step is I look for alternatives. What's the second step? What am I going to do after that? If I've looked for alternatives and I have, say, 3 other options, or that include different timing, different date, all of that. What's the next thing you're going to do?
Choose the one that fits best with your family.
Okay, choose the one that fits best with your family. Iksha, how are you going to do that?
So, as I mentioned in the chat, I think like the best way to do it is have a proper discussion with them and find out when each of them are free so that you can plan a proper trip.
Awesome. So it's important to build empathy around it, right? Like build knowledge of what their perspective is. Maybe there are people who are not available the next day. Maybe there are people who can't wake up early because of some other issues. You've got to know what's going on with everyone before you actually take a decision. Awesome. And the decision honestly sometimes doesn't matter. It's the process that we go through that determines how well we have thought through the process. The decisions get impacted by many other things that are external to what we can do. What we can do well is the process of thinking well and ensuring that we do some research, which is looking for alternatives, talk to our family, which is considering their perspective, and then weigh out what are the best options that we have. And maybe the best option that you have is still going to the same venue, but maybe you find a different alternative based on the conversations you have. Awesome. I'm not going to go into the decision because honestly, like I said, that's something that is based on a lot of external things, which is why that's not the most important here. But let's go to the next situation that we have. We have an annual day coming up, and you need to figure out what should be the theme. Who all worked on this and how did you define the problem?
Can you repeat?
I'm asking, whoever worked on this situation, how did you define the problem?
For me, the problem had been that every people of different generations, every people have their own likings and own stuff. So it's about their preferences.
So there's a varied audience and everybody has their own preference.
Yes.
Awesome. And why is this a problem, Sanjiti?
Ma'am, maybe because for me, what may be a good thing may not be good for the others, as what's interesting for me may not be interesting for others.
Absolutely.
Can
Awesome.
be even taken to account as music, because some people do love classical music while others they prefer pop. So in this way, I think that interests matter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anybody else who'd like to share? Awesome, Rupak. The problem is to find a suitable theme that cater to everyone, should be approved by everyone. There's something to perform on that theme. Absolutely. It's important to generate new creative ideas instead of repeating things that have already been done. So it's to cater to the varied crowd. It's important to do something new that has not been done before, because this is something that happens, this is a huge event that happens once a year. What is it that you would do about it? What are the next steps that you would all like to take?
For me, what I wrote was I like to analyze the situation, like ask people about their opinions. For me, I like to ask different people about their opinions on what or how they want their teams to be. And based on that, we can choose something which is proper and accepting to all.
So you'd like to maybe do a little survey, find a way to get to most people who are going to be part of this. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sanjiti. Anybody else who'd like to share? Go ahead, Sanjiti. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. Anybody else would like to share in the chat, or who would like to share by unmuting themselves? I know that we had a lot of people who worked on this problem.
Ma'am, may I?
Yes, please go ahead.
Ma'am, I think it would be good to pick something that is of that the students are interested in, and that's something they would participate in eagerly, and not something that's repeated a lot.
Okay, so you'd like to take the opinion of the students because they're the ones who are participating. If they're having fun, that's great. And obviously do something new that's not been repeated. Thank you so much. So you said focus on what students want.
Like others said, that they can take ideas from the other peers of our school, but we can also take two main ideas and ask our peers and other schoolmates to just vote for it. Like it could be
absolutely. Give a short list of ideas and ask them to vote for it. Absolutely. Awesome. So we have people who are saying that it should portray an issue, the theme, it should put forward a cutting edge solution, keeping in mind the need of the time. We should prioritize students as they are aware of new and current trends, and they would like to finalize the performance. We can create groups who share, who take different kinds of decisions. We can choose a theme that motivates people to reach a successful standpoint. Awesome. This is great. So again, are there any themes that you think are overlapping in the steps that you have all talked about between the previous situation that we had and this situation? Are there any common trends that you can find?
To make sure that everyone is together and is having a good time in whatever they are doing.
Okay, so yes, we want everyone to be together. We want everyone to be having a good time. That's a thing. Awesome. We can also, I really like this idea, Geeta Priya, that we should have different types of themes. Maybe we should have more than one theme of the entire event so that we can cater to different needs. Right, so Hannah, analysis is part of all of them. Personal preference is part of all of them. Right, so analysis is a huge part of figuring out what we have to do next and how we should take the decision. Ayush, that's absolutely true. Taking into consideration the choices of as many people as possible to engage everyone actively. So it's important to ensure that others' opinions are taken into consideration. Great. Let's get to the next situation, because I think this one is most unique because this is a very personal situation. This does not involve anyone else. And most of the critical thinking we do is actually about these things, right? The decisions that we take for ourselves about whether we want to go out on a particular day, whether we want to work at a particular time. All of these are actually critical thinking decisions that you're taking. They're all decisions you're taking through a certain process. So this is a very personal problem. And Ayush, I really liked the answer that you gave. Would you like to share that with everyone? Start off with the problem that you had defined and share your answer with everyone.
Yes, I would have that. I would love that. The thing is, I actually bought a new phone myself, so it was a very easy thing for me to say or write. So thing is, we have a budget is given to us, so we have to first see and look about it or oversee the thing about it. The budget is very limited, and phones are available. A variety range of phones are available, but we have to look upon it. So that leads us to the second thing. We have to do research on that given range, see what are the current trending things or the things like battery, like someone mentioned, waterproofing, or many other things that we specifically want it. Because sometimes it depends on what you are using it. Some people want to emphasis on the gaming part, some people on longevity, some on daily use. Like I myself would be daily use and longevity, so that is the main thing that I had to consider doing it. Again, after that, I had asked many of my friends what are the possible choices that I may consider, companies that are good or companies that are going on the top right now with these specifications. And then I had my father and I, we chose some specific models that we could buy, that I wanted to buy. And then upon that, my father did the rest part. He read some reviews based on the model. He asked his colleagues about it. He's in the working field, so he has more experience, or he has people who has more experience in this field. And then we selected the phone which I had bought.
Awesome. That's great. And this is a great summary of the process of critical thinking as well. So you defined a problem, you did some research. Do you all see elements of research going into the other two situations as well? You can say yes, you can give a thumbs up,
yes,
give a thumbs down if you don't think that research went into others.
Most definitely, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Awesome. Do you also see that there is an element of asking others, talking to other people to get their opinion, even if it's a decision for yourself sometimes? So if you just want to go out somewhere, if you want to buy, when I'm buying clothes, the first thing I do is click pictures of myself and send them to my sister because I want to know what she thinks about it. So when you're buying a phone, there is asking friends, doing research. Was there an element of talking to other people, particularly because the other two situations were about group decisions that we were taking? Was there an element of talking to other people that you noticed?
I feel like in this situation, people's opinion would be important because take an example, I don't have a phone and other people are using different types of phones. So if somebody has an iPhone and the other person has a Samsung, I can talk to both the people, take their opinion about which phone is better, and then I could compare. But I feel like you gave the clothes example, in certain things, I feel like it's not always important to ask for other people's opinion because at the end, you're the one who has to use the thing. So it matters what you think about it. But yeah, for things like phone or anything like that, if you don't have any experience about it, then people's reviews and opinion about it might play a really important role.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Of course, there are going to be different priorities for different people. I like to take that decision having shared it with someone, and there could be somebody who would be really confident, knows a lot about phones, can just go buy it on their own. They don't need others' opinion. But like you, haven't used a phone before, don't have one. So it would be really useful for you to see other people's perspectives and understand, get user reviews, right? instead of just reading them. Actually ask your friends about it. Awesome. After that, is a lot of you talked about in the chat also that you would analyze what people are saying, particularly for this annual day event, that you talk to people and then you'd analyze what they're saying. We had a element of reading reviews here, figuring out what are the pros and cons of all the phones, because that's why we're reading the reviews, whether they fulfill the requirements that we have or not. What do you think that is? What are we trying to do here? Why are we trying to figure out whether a phone fulfills a requirement? What would that process be? Anybody would like to tag what this means?
I'm evaluating the
Could you
situation.
please repeat?
Sorry, Raima, what were you saying? Could you share that once again? I missed what you were saying.
Ma'am, evaluating the situation.
Absolutely. You're examining what is it that you already know now. So you've spoken to people, you've analyzed what is available online, and now you've got to figure out what are the pros and cons. That's examining the evidence, which is something really important to do before you take a decision. So if it was a trip with the family, you would have found alternatives, you would have spoken to people. Now you know what is available, what is it that people want, and you've got to look at it holistically before you actually take a decision. Right. We're running a little bit behind time, so I'm going to quickly go back into the slideshow. This is the process that I see in critical thinking, right? And the way I see it is critical thinking and research are both a means to an end, and they go hand in hand. You identify a problem that you're facing, you ask questions around it, you find out why. First, you ask questions to yourself, you ask questions to others, you practice empathy because you've got to consider other people's views, because if you're taking a decision for other people, it's important to know what they think about it. You examine the evidence you have based on those questions that you asked and the different perspectives that you gathered, and then you take a decision. It seems really straightforward. There are a lot of loopholes that come in, which is something that I'd love to discuss more with all of you on another day. But in the most simple way, words that I could put forth, this is the process of critical thinking. And I would say that identifying your problem is the most important part of it, because sometimes we think we're solving one problem, but actually we're trying to solve something very different. The problem with respect to the family trip could have been not the location, but finding a time and a place where everybody can come. It can be a scheduling issue instead of a location issue. It can be an issue of ensuring that it's a particular, there is adequate accessibility for everyone, because there could be family members who can't get to a certain space. So sometimes problems are much broader or very different from what you think they are, which is why asking questions and talking to people becomes all the more important. Yes, Anjali, this is the end. This is my last slide. I don't have anything after this. Tell me all the questions that you have. I wanted to leave the last 5 to 7 minutes for that. Go ahead. And if you have more questions, you can please type them in the chat.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I wanted to ask, for the first situation, it may happen as for some people, they might prefer to go in the same situation, even though it's crowded, because for them, that moment may be very special, because the people who are visiting me may not be having more time with them. Like they might be going somewhere else the next day. So we can be visiting the crowded place, even though we will not get the full potential of it, we will at least have a glimpse of what we wanted. So can there be a possibility?
Absolutely. And that could have been your decision based on the conversations you had with people, right? Based on understanding that
yes, ma'am, because
the crowdedness actually doesn't matter. What matters is the location. Jyoti,
Yes.
thank you so much, Anjali, for that comment. Jyoti, that's a great question that you have here, that what about if evidence is not available, if the situation is new or without any precedent? I think at that time, it's again still very important to talk to people who may be more experienced than you, because maybe they haven't experienced the same situation, but they've experienced something similar, or they have something to offer that can be used in this situation. For a lot of us, COVID was something that we thought was a unique situation, right? How many of you thought COVID was unprecedented? Something like COVID has never happened before. Can you give me a thumbs up?
It has, but not in modern times.
Okay. So people who've experienced something like this are not alive anymore, maybe.
Yeah, they're not.
Okay. Okay, Myra, you think it has, but just not to us. Exactly. Very often we think there is a situation that is unprecedented, but it has happened somewhere. So Singapore has experienced one similar outbreak, which was not a global pandemic, but was a pandemic-like situation in Singapore. Africa has experienced multiple such situations, the most recent before COVID being Ebola, where they actually went through lockdowns and social distancing and all of that. So there was a precedent. It's just that we did not think that we thought that it was unprecedented, and we thought that we didn't know about it. But yeah, so there's always something that somebody may know that can help you out in a situation.